Good evening, YouTube, and welcome to the Piper Report. So the Ninth Circuit Federal Court has once again made an outlandish ruling, and it questions all rhyme and reason. For those who don't know about the Ninth Circuit Court, 8 out of 10 of their cases, their rulings, are overturned by the Supreme Court. They are, in essence, statists who want to legislate from the bench. They no longer hear cases and decide to rule on the cases based on precedent, that is, pre-existing law, statutes, things of that nature, but rather they base it off of emotion, which we know from watching regressives and from hearing about regressives. Regressives use emotion all the time for their arguments. They don't rely on facts. And emotion is a very, very powerful motivator, especially in an argument. Because if you disagree with something that most people believe is just morally acceptable, it is because you are an immoral person. And as an example, we can look at healthcare. Healthcare, everyone wants to be healthy, and everyone wants their families to be healthy. So a lot of the times you will hear regressives argue for universal healthcare based on the notion that, well, if it was your family, these people have a right to live. You're basically killing these people, but you don't care about people's lives. And no, it's not about that. The argument in this example would be that there are more efficient ways to handle healthcare. Just because you don't agree with one particular way, one particular methodology, doesn't mean that you are automatically a bad person. It doesn't mean that you feel that children should die, that senior citizens should not get any health care. It has nothing to do with that. It's a different approach to how to solve the problem. Ben Shapiro says a lot that facts don't care about your feelings. And this is true. And this is, I think, the biggest difference between the left and the right. And I don't want to really put the left all into the same category regarding this, but they argue emotion a lot. They feel something should happen because it is morally right to do so. And if you question that morality, it is because you are immoral. And in that regard, you are a bad person. So let me circle back now to this. The Ninth Circuit has been legislating from the bench. You know, whenever Congress or Donald Trump signs an executive order and it goes to the Ninth Circuit Court, that is going to be overturned. It automatically will. It doesn't matter exactly where in statute it says the president has so and so power. It doesn't matter to them. They automatically reject it because they are partisan. They're highly partisan. But not to worry, 8 out of 10 cases are reversed. Now, let me read it like a paragraph and go over this, because this article, or not this article, but this ruling is just insane. In 2006, 5 justices restricted the free speech rights of public employees. In 2017, we see the consequences. The Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals ruled this week that a high school football coach, Joseph Kennedy, had no First Amendment right to kneel and briefly pray at the 50-yard line after a football game. At least not when he's wearing school gear, and not when parents and students can see what he does. He never asked anyone to join him. He never required any player to pray beside him. He wasn't skipping out of mandatory job responsibility. He had no captive audience, yet still, the court held that he had no First Amendment right to pray. So, I look at this, and the first thing pops in my mind is, how do you enforce that? I was an athlete growing up. I played lots of sports, and I particularly played soccer. I was really good at soccer. And there have been many times that I have kneeled and that I have bowed my head, and I wasn't praying. So, how can you determine exactly when a player or when a coach kneels down and bows their head? How can you determine if they're praying? The only thing that could determine that is if they do the sign of the cross or some type of religious mannerism. Other than that, you are basing what they are thinking on your own personal perception, which is going to be highly partisan. For instance, if you have a lot of atheists in the crowd and they see someone take a knee and bow their head, their first thought is that he or she is praying. They don't really think that there's any other reasons why you can opt out. But I think this ruling actually drives to another issue. A more important issue is that it wasn't like the first paragraph said. This coach wasn't forcing the players to pray with him. He did it on his own. He wasn't teaching it in class. He wasn't making them, the classroom, abide by his standards in terms of a religious ceremony. But yet, he's in the wrong here. So can you see how the thought police is trying to dictate what you can think, what you can feel, what you can say? We know that they are actually banning words now. They're trying to get the word Dixie banned, because Dixie represents the Confederates, the Confederate States. We see a lot of this happening in this world today, and it lacks substance. And if we have a court, a federal circuit court of appeals, that is involved with these highly partisan and insane decisions, how can we actually trust our legislation, our legislative system? How can we trust the court systems to know that they're going to decide their decisions by basing it on the Constitution and precedent? We don't know. We actually don't know, because the more cases we see them rule on, the more outlandish they become. The more we realize that they are highly partisan. They are statists. They only have one particular objective, and that is to spread their own ideology. They don't care about what is maybe right or wrong in terms of the Constitution when you correspond your rulings based on the Constitution. It's about emotion. And it comes back to that same argument that emotion should trump facts. And it shouldn't. It shouldn't. We have statutes. We have precedent. We have pre-existing law. We have that for a reason. The judges don't get to legislate from the bench. No matter how hard they want to, they don't get to. But they are doing it. And there's nothing people can do about it. Because if you question their rulings, it's because you are immoral. You are questioning their right. You're questioning what the people want in their minds. Like it brings me back to that when I was first talking about when I first started this video. If you argue against emotion, it is because you are the worst possible thing imaginable. You automatically don't have emotion. If you talk about healthcare and you don't believe in universal healthcare, it's because you don't care that there are sick people who need treatment. It doesn't affect you. You don't care about them. And this type of argument should not be administered at the high court level, at the federal court level. It just shouldn't. Why not? It would be easy, after decades of watching the Ninth Circuit in action, to ascribe the outcome to classic judicial anti-religious bias. In fact, there was a concurring opinion in the case that absurdly argued that the school district would violate the Establishment Clause if it allowed its coach to publicly take a knee immediately after the game. One can only imagine the founders' hysterical laughter at the notion. Honestly, I don't think they'd be laughing. I think they'd be depressed. If they could actually see us right now, they would be rolling around in their graves to see how we have devolved as a country, and to see that this devolution we are experiencing is actually being pushed more and more. It's not like we devolved to a certain area and now we all know that we have to fix it. No, it's that this devolution is being supported by those on the fringe left, the regressive left. They want this to keep on. They want this devolution to continue. It's not like we're just, okay, let's work together now. We're in a bad place. Let's bring this country back. It's no, we are going to the right place here. Let's keep going like we are. It's this mindset, it's this type of mentality that we have to watch out for, especially when we see it on a federal court of appeals. The true culprit, however, wasn't the Ninth Circuit. It was the Supreme Court of the U.S. No, actually, it was the conservative wing of the court. Yes, that's right, the conservatives. In 2006, Justices Kennedy, Roberts, Alito, Thomas, and Scalia voted together in a case called Garcetti versus Cabellos to substantially restrict the free speech rights of public employees, formerly employees of federal, state, and local governments, including public high school football coaches. enjoyed freedom to speak on matters of public concern, so as long as their speech didn't interfere with the government's effective and efficient fulfillment of its responsibilities to the public. The balancing test represented a speech protective effort to provide the public with the benefits of free speech while still protecting the rights of the employer to manage the workplace. Under this classic test, the football coach wins easily, unless the Ninth Circuit Court is overcome by anti-religious bias. All sides agreed that his religious speech dealt with matters of public concern, and there is simply no credible argument that his short prayer interfered with the school's district ability to fulfill its responsibilities. It could only argue that the prayer violated the Establishment Clause, a perversion of classic First Amendment doctrine. Again, how do you know someone's praying? And if they kneel down, bow their head for 5 seconds, maybe they say, "Thank you, God," but you don't hear it, and they come back up. Is that really so detrimental to the rights of the school? I will post the whole link or the whole article in the description so you can read the whole thing, but yeah, we have to really be careful where we're going as a country. The further we devolve, the worse it's going to get. And we have to start impeaching these judges. Now, the problem with impeaching the judges is that you are accused that you are doing so or that you want to do so because you want to create a hyper-partisan Supreme Court or a hyper-partisan federal court so you can initiate your political ideology, your policy. This is simply not true. But how can you argue that efficiently? Because those who like what the judge does here, this Ninth Circuit, they're going to think that any type of impeachment of them is automatically a partisan issue, that they're trying to destroy the sovereignty of the court system. And it's the complete opposite. But they will never see that because these judges are devolving the country the way that they want this country to devolve. And those on the left, the regressive left, are loving it because this is everything they dreamed for. This is everything they want. They're destroying history right in front of our eyes. An ESPN anchor, his last name was Lee, or his name was Robert Lee. He was Asian. He wasn't allowed to broadcast a game in Virginia because of his name. Because of his name, he shared his name with a general in the Confederate Army. An ESPN anchor or broadcaster was also fired after talking about a Venus Williams game and said that she was using guerrilla tactics, the Guerrilla, guerrilla. Not the guerrilla like an animal, but guerrilla tactics like warfare, like, how Vietnam was. They jump out, they kill you, and they run back in the bushes. She was employing that type of tactic, that type of skill in her tennis, but some people thought that he was actually calling her a guerrilla, and since she was black, that was a racist term, and they had to fire him. This is the trajectory that we are going towards. Do you really want to see this in the future? If not, I think you should contact your representatives, your congressmen, your senators, and tell them you want to begin the impeachment process on these federal judges that are highly partisan. You want change in this country. You want to actually stop this devolution from occurring. It is possible to end this, but you can't just do it by sitting down and complaining. You got to contact your representatives and tell them what is happening here. Explain to them why you want to change it. Like I said, I will post the article in the description, so be sure to check it out, and I'm done.